Hey Merfolk fans, Joe here. Thank you for tuning into my channel today. I am here with a Jund doubleheader replay. This will be a video replay of the first match that I played. Last night I played back-to-back Jund matchups, and they were both pretty good matches. So here we go. Looking at the opening hands, you can see I have kind of a frightening hand. I have Mutavault and Cavern of Souls. No blue source, no double blue for all these excellent creature cards. Merrow Reejerey requires just one more land. I have no idea what opponent I'm playing against now. On the play, this is pretty sketchy. On the draw, it's a little more reasonable. But sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do, and I decided to keep this hand this game. Silvergill is a good draw. Vial is a decent draw. But unfortunately, you know, those are about the only good draws apart from blue sources. So let's see how that goes. And on the opponent's side of things, we can see they have 1, 2, 3 lands covering all their colors, 2 lightning bolts, Liliana the Veil, and Kalidas, Trader of Get. A super solid hand. So sketchy on the Merfolk side, super solid on the Jund side. Let's see how this opening game went. Again, I was on the play, winning the die roll. Both of us keep. I'll open with Cavern of Souls, hoping to draw into a second blue source here. Opponent draws a forest and passes the turn after putting Raging Ravine onto the battlefield. So I had a third Merrow Reejerey, which might be good in the future for lots of tapping and untapping action. However, missing my land drop increases the sketchiness on my side of the table. The opponent draws another land, but with no pressure on my side of the table. He's going to play his second Raging Ravine tapped. He's got a lot of time. Cursecatcher is really suboptimal here. I'm losing a lot of tempo, not getting my creatures out of my hand. So see how these sketchy keeps can really bite us in the butt sometimes. The opponent's going to tap his 2 Raging Ravines to play a Scavenging Ooze, follow up with a tapped Overgrown Tomb. So for my 4th turn, I believe, I hit my 3rd land in a Mutavault. A little bit suboptimal, and I'm going to get in for 2 with the Cursecatcher. So at least I've got some plays lined up here. Now that I've got 3 lands going. I'm not going to block the Scavenging Ooze with Reejerey. That's just not going to happen yet. Alright, the opponent follows up with an Abrupt Decay on Merrow Reejerey, leaving Raging Ravine up for Lightning Bolt. Plays a forest and passes the turn. I draw into an AEther Vial, continuing the pattern of awkwardness in this game. I'll play out another Reejerey and attack again for 2. The opponent, rather than using a bolt yet, decides to take 2. And eats the Merrow Reejerey with his Scavenging Ooze, and then decides to Lightning Bolt my Reejerey. Cursecatcher is going to take care of that. Slight misstep by the opponent, but I think he's got so much gas in his hand that he's not really too afraid of whatever I've got going on the side of the table. The opponent's going to play a Swamp and follow up with Kalidas, Trader of Get, bolting the Reejerey. Kalidas is going to make a zombie. I'm going to exile my Reejerey. Opponent attacked me for 3 with the Scavenging Ooze. I finally draw an island, but it might just be too little too late here. Okay, I'm going to play an AEther Vial and a Reejerey. Try to get some tempo going again. Unfortunately, the opponent has some great cards in hand, and with only 1 creature on the table here, we're pretty susceptible to Liliana if he chooses to go that way. He's going to start off by eating my Cursecatcher, making his Scavenging Ooze a 4/4. Follow up, of course, with Liliana the Veil. Merrow Reejerey is going to eat it, and at that point, I just scooped it up. It took me way too long to get my lands going. I mentioned from the very outset that it was kind of a pretty much a roll of the dice, I guess, as far as me drawing the land I needed to as quickly as I needed to in order for this hand to be good. In retrospect, I probably should have mulliganed and taken advantage of the scry. That new scry rule is very productive and can make some really good 6-card hands. Anyhow, lost game 1. Let's go ahead and see what happened game 2. Now, to give you guys an idea, let me go ahead and see the opening hands here. To give you guys an idea of my sideboard against Jund, having played the 2 matches last night, it's fresh in my memory. I bring in 3 Tidebinders, 3 Dispels, and 2 Relic of Progenitus. That's 8 cards in. And I take out 4 AEther Vials. Let's see, 4 AEther Vials. What else is not amazing? I take out 3 Cursecatchers and I think the Echoing Truth. Yeah, so that would be 3 Dispels, 3 Tidebinders, and 2 Relic of Progenitus. Coming in and going out is the 4 AEther Vials, 3 Cursecatchers, and the Echoing Truth, leaving in the 2 Dismembers. So we can see this opening hand is a mulligan, unfortunately. On the opponent's side of things, he's got 4 lands, a Terminate, a Tarmogoyf, and a Dark Confidant. It looks very strong to me. No hand disruption is notable. So I think about it for a moment and ultimately decide to mulligan. Looking at this hand, it's solid, especially given the scry. The opponent decided to keep, and I look at the top card and decide to leave it there. I'll open with an island and pass the turn. The opponent hit a Maelstrom Pulse. Against Merfolk, I'm sure they're never sad to see removal. I left a Spreading Seas on the top of the deck, which is going to be great to hit this Overgrown Tomb here and draw me into a card to give me more information about how to proceed in subsequent turns. All right, the opponent drew into a land. At this point, they have 5 lands. Play a Blackcleave Cliffs and Dark Confidant, trying to get card advantage going on. On my side of things, having drawn into a Silvergill Adept, I'm going to choose to lead with the Silvergill. I'll prevent the Dark Confidant from getting in. I wouldn't want to block with a Lord, and I don't mind blocking with the Silvergill. I'll reveal the Lord of Atlantis and draw another island. Silvergill helping me to draw more quickly through these excess lands. Okay, the opponent revealed a Raging Ravine to his Dark Confidant trigger, and then drew a Damnation for the turn. That was very fortunate ordering of that because he would have lost 4 life off of the Damnation. Alright, so free land for the opponent that turn. Takes a moment to think about his play this turn. Let's take a look at his hand and see if we can predict what he's going to go ahead and do this turn. Let's see, Raging Ravine will come in tapped. He can get untapped green through the forest, or Blackcleave Cliffs. Now Blackcleave will only come into play untapped if he plays it right now. But if he does that, he doesn't have access to green for Maelstrom Pulse, and he doesn't have access to green for Tarmogoyf, leaving him only Terminate as an option. But that seems reasonable, given that I'm probably going to play a creature next turn. So having surveyed those options, let's see what the opponent actually decided to do. Okay, so he went with the forest and decided to actually tap out right now for a Maelstrom Pulse on the Silvergill Adept. Now let's examine that move a little bit. Maelstrom Pulse on, so a 3-drop removal spell on a 2-drop creature that has already drawn me a card seems extremely aggressive. I guess with the opponent having Terminate and Damnation in hand, he feels pretty safe as far as removal goes, and he wants to start hitting me with his Dark Confidant. That's the only thing I can think of, although he could have played Blackcleave Cliffs and Terminate, leaving Maelstrom Pulse. I guess the opponent doesn't realize right now that Maelstrom Pulse is one of the only effective pieces of removal that Jund plays that can actually hit Master of Waves. So I don't know, a pretty awkward move by the opponent. Attacks with Dark Confidant, and if he plays this Cliffs, at any point now it's going to enter the battlefield tapped, slowing him down. Alright, I draw into another Lord. It's a lot of gas that I have in my hand now. I'm going to play out the island and think better of it actually and play the Oboro. Jund occasionally plays Choke in the sideboard. It's worth noting that if they do play Choke, they would be locking down at least one of their own lands with Spreading Seas. So having a non-island blue source in my hand, I'll go ahead and play that, and with Spreading Seas on the table, it's going to be most efficient for me using my mana this turn to tap out, play a Master of Waves, creating 2 elemental tokens. The opponent's turn, he reveals yet another land off the Dark Confidant and draws into a Verdant Catacombs. So the opponent is totally set on lands for a while. So what is their choice here? They're probably thinking about sitting back on this Damnation, so they might want to hold the Tarmogoyf in hand. So let's see what the choice was. Okay, so he does play the Blackcleave Cliffs and doesn't attack with the Dark Confidant. So I drew a Dismember for the turn. The opponent has mana up for what? Let's check it out. Has black and green, so we don't have to be afraid of Terminate, but if he had something like Abrupt Decay, that would be a problem. But I'm not really worrying about him Abrupt Decaying my Elementals. Abrupt Decay can't target Master of Waves because he costs 4, and Abrupt Decay is capped at CMC 3 or less, and it can't target lands. So Abrupt Decay is not really a big worry for me. He could have a Bolt, but Master of Waves has protection from red. With all that in mind, about what the opponent could possibly play, I choose to tap Mutavault here, which I sort of immediately realized was a slight misstep, because I'm not going to be able to, or rather, I don't want to put 2 of my lords onto the table and overextend into something like a Damnation, but I would have liked to play 1 lord and then attack with Mutavault. So I was a little hasty in tapping my lands here. I really wish that I had tapped, say, the Oboro, and then followed up casting a Lord with 2 other blue sources, and then attack with the Mutavault along with everybody else. But that's not going to be an option. I don't really do takesies backsies, even on Cockatrice. So I lose 4 life, cast Dismember on his Dark Confidant to take him off of his life gain card advantage. Hit the opponent for 6. It's a nice chunk, going from 20 down to 14. It's amazing that we've gotten so far into the game with the Dark Confidant on the table, and he hasn't lost any life yet. He just has drawn land after land after land. In this spot, I'm going to go ahead and pass the turn. So, against any deck that can potentially play sweepers, you always have to play really, really cautiously, looking out for spells like Damnation or Wrath of God or Supreme Verdict that can just sink you in card advantage. The opponent right now, after having the Dark Confidant on the table for a few turns, has 8 cards in hand. He's going to have 5 lands on the table and pretty much play whatever he wants to play at this point. If I were to play out 2 of my lords and he follows up with something like a Damnation, then what we're looking at is something like 6 cards in the opponent's hand to no cards in my hand. As it stands, I have a Master of Waves with resistance against any red spells. These Elementals who are poking for 2 damage, and if the opponent wants to waste removal on my Elemental tokens, by all means. And we have a Mutavault who's getting buffed by Master of Waves. So total right now we have 9 power, which is a lot of pressure, and I felt at that moment that I didn't need to commit anybody to the board, having missed my line to attack with Mutavault last turn. So the opponent drew another Dark Confidant. He's going to choose to play that guy. Try to get some card advantage, potentially baiting me into playing more creatures. Maybe he'll draw 1 card off Dark Confidant and then blow everything up with Damnation. So for my turn, I drew into a Harbinger of the Tides. And knowing that the opponent, again, could be playing a Damnation or an Anger of the Gods or something like that, I'm thinking that it seems a decent play to just bring Harbinger of the Tides in at the end of the turn, maybe bounce his Bob or something like that. So I go to attacks, get in with the Elementals. If he wants to trade Bob for one of my Elementals, that's fine. He does not. He will crack the Verdant Catacombs, continuing to hit his life total all the way down to 9 now. More than half of the way there. Alright, so the opponent finds a Blood Crypt. And he reveals yet another land to the Dark Confidant. Extremely lucky. I think he's going to crack another Verdant Catacombs, going down to 8. Getting a Swamp, and he's going to hit me with this Inquisition of Kozilek. I've got a lot of redundancy in my hand right now, and I give the opponent the choice of taking the Harbinger out of my hand if he wants, because even though the Harbinger can bounce something, I think that he's a little bit less valuable than any of these Island Walk Lords. The opponent agrees with me and chooses to take the Lord of Atlantis. Okay, so having cast Inquisition of Kozilek, the opponent's going to go ahead and pass the turn. He doesn't think that this Damnation is worthwhile yet, since he had only hit 1 of my creatures, taking out his Dark Confidant along the way. I'll go ahead and flash in Harbinger at the end of the turn, and untap, getting more creatures onto the battlefield. And Dispel makes me feel a little bit better. I can try to get in a lot of damage this turn, and if the opponent tries to kill something like my Lord in order to prevent Island Walk, I can just counter it with Dispel. So that's the plan this turn. I'm going to try to push a lot of Island Walk damage. The opponent knows I have these Lords in hand, doesn't know that I have the Dispel, so he might think that I'm walking into sort of a trap here, but anybody playing against Jund with 1 creature on the table and 6 cards in hand has to know that they have either a Lightning Bolt or a Terminate or an Abrupt Decay, one of those things. And while Abrupt Decay would get around any counter spells, it's only one out of sort of a litany of possible removal spells that the opponent could have in hand. And I can't hedge against everything. I've got a counter spell in hand. I've got lethal on board. Let's go ahead and push it and see what the opponent has. So I think for a moment about Master of Waves attacking or not, and ultimately decide to hold him back in case the opponent has 2 pieces of removal for the Pearl Trident, taking me off Island Walk. He could then block the Master of Waves, killing all my elementals. As it stands, let's look at the damage that I'm attacking for. Mutavault is being buffed by Master of the Pearl Trident and Master of Waves, so it's a 4/4 and a 3/3 and 2 2/2s. So that's a total of 11 damage. 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 2. 4 plus 3 is 7, plus 2 is 9, plus 2 is 11. Now the opponent is going to be sort of reluctant, I think, to trade off with his Dark Confidant, though that may not be the case just because his life total is getting so low. Looking again at his hand, we can see he only has a single Terminate, and it's not going to be able to get the job done here. Taps his lands, has no idea I have this Dispel. He just cast an Inquisition of Kozilek last turn. We can still see it in the graveyard. He's going to have to feel pretty bad about the Dispel. So he thought about it long and hard. He's going to block and try to trade with an Elemental. Strange that he didn't block the Harbinger. But he's trying to kill my Mutavault. I guess it's good to take me off lands when he can. But that leaves me with Island Walk. This guy would still hit for 3, and this guy would hit for 2, bringing the opponent down to 5. However, we see that I have the Dispel, and at that point, the opponent decided to scoop it up. Oh well, actually he didn't realize that it was lethal. He tried to take 7 at first, which doesn't quite make sense. Let's see, 2 plus 2 plus 3, I guess, is what he was thinking. Though I don't know, why he would have thought that. It's actually 2 plus 3 plus 4, which again is 9, which was lethal. So when the opponent saw that, they realized that math is a handy skill to have a mastery of while playing Magic the Gathering. Let's go to the concluding 3rd game. Looking at my opening hand, it seems pretty solid. I've got maybe 1 too many lands, but at least one of them is a Mutavault. We've got Tidebinder for Scavenging Ooze and Tarmogoyfs. We've got Island Walk, as long as we can get an island. And we've got some removal, so seems like a pretty good hand on my side. Looking at the opponent's side of things, he's got 3 lands covering all his colors, including a fast land, avoid taking too much damage. Huntmaster of the Fells, Kalidas, pretty clunky creatures, going to have to wait a while to get those guys out, and he still has to hit a 4th land. Thoughtseize is going to pick my hand apart early on, and if things do move into the late game, a Damnation to clean things up. So these were 2... Let's see, the opponent mulliganed that. I guess he felt that it was too slow against Merfolk, and it's very interesting. The Thoughtseize, I felt like, may have made that hand a keep, especially with the Blackcleave Cliffs. But the opponent chose to throw it away, and now has a hand with 3 green creatures and 3 lands, which he decides to keep. I think he forgets to scry, too. People do this on Cockatrice sometimes. Sometimes I remind people, sometimes I don't. Kind of depends on what deck they're playing. If you're playing Jund, I'm not going to remind you about anything. Alright, drew another Lord, which is great. We really didn't need any other lands. I'll play out an island and pass the turn back to the opponent. Okay, he draws an Inquisition of Kozilek. Going to crack a Verdant Catacombs for a swamp and play Inquisition of Kozilek. Tarmogoyf and Scavenging Ooze are pretty small at this point. I guess he chooses Inquisition because he figures I have a valuable target in my hand that he wants to get rid of. However, I do have some redundancy in my Lords, so taking one of those away isn't the end of the world for me. Okay, so we'll go ahead and just hide this guy. We'll keep my hand open just to make sure we know what the opponent has information about. Okay, so for my turn, I drew another land. A little bit unfortunate. I'll play the Wanderwine Hub, hedging against Choke a little bit, and play the Master of the Pearl Trident, just so this guy doesn't get picked out of my hand with another Inquisition or something like that. Opponent drew into Kolaghan's Command, and we can see the clunkiness of playing so many Raging Ravines in Jund. It comes into play tapped, and the opponent can't use his high-impact spells as early in the game as they really want to. Instead, he's just going to play a Tarmogoyf, which if we look at the opponent's graveyard, he has land and sorcery, and I have a creature, so it's a 3/4. I drew into Spreading Seas, which is really excellent because we can see the opponent is light on black lands. So that's going to be priority number 1 here. I have to imagine, I can't quite remember, but Spreading Seas on the black land is a big deal playing against Jund. This will keep him off Kolaghan's Command. I'll follow up with the Dismember on the Tarmogoyf to clear up the board and swing in for 2 points of damage with the Master. Opponent goes down to 17. Okay, so untapping, he draws a Damnation, which is very clunky, having no black lands. After thinking about it for a little while, the opponent plays out a Scavenging Ooze, looking to take advantage of some of this fodder in the graveyard to grow the guy, gain some life, get a big creature on the table. Drew into a second Spreading Seas. Now, some of you may think that the opponent having missed his 4th land drop altogether, it may be a great idea to go ahead and hit a Raging Ravine right now and just cut him down even further on mana. This Spreading Seas, however, is going to be far and away more useful, the most useful, waiting for the opponent to hit another black source and then taking him off of it. We need to cut him off of Liliana the Veil, Terminate, Dark Confidant, Damnation, Inquisition, Thoughtseize. Black gives Jund access to a lot of spells, and I'm going to save this Spreading Seas and see if I can't hit another black source with it. So leaving that in reserve, I'm going to cast a Silvergill, revealing the Tidebinder Mage. Drawing into another Tidebinder Mage makes me feel a little bit more comfortable about deploying the first Tidebinder Mage. Also feel a little bit more comfortable doing what could be considered sort of overextending, only because the opponent has no access to black mana right now. At the end of the turn, the opponent is going to eat my Master of the Pearl Trident, growing his tapped Scavenging Ooze. So the opponent draws another extremely awkward land in Blackcleave Cliff since it enters the battlefield tapped. Now, realize if this came into the battlefield untapped, he could cast Kolaghan's Command, killing my Tidebinder or my Lord. Actually, not killing the Tidebinder, kill the Lord, untap the Scavenging Ooze, and get his game going. However, this land enters the battlefield tapped, and he's limited to playing another Tarmogoyf. So I drew into an island. Here's this black source I was talking about previously. It's going to certainly get hit by Spreading Seas this turn. I just have to think about which lands I want to use, whether or not I want to attack with Mutavault this turn. Okay, so I just double-checked the opponent's Goyf at that point and told him that it was a 4/5. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and play the Tidebinder Mage, tapping down his Tarmogoyf. Now, my thought process here, let's see, was... I know that there was a rationale to playing the Tidebinder sort of pre-combat. I suppose the idea was if the opponent has a bolt or something, I don't know. I guess the idea is just to sort of piss him off and cast it in the second main phase. So that's what I went with. Tidebinder tapping down the Goyf. That is going to allow the Master to attack as well, getting in for 2+3+3 for 8. The opponent again thinks it's 6. I tell him it's 8. He goes down to 8. The follow-up with Spreading Seas on his black source and draw into a Reejerey. Play an island and pass the turn. The opponent draws a Terminate. Probably pretty frustrated at this point. Thinks if there's any hope at all. And I think in the end, just realizes that there is no hope. He has lost to the power of the Merfolk. Nothing he can do to prevent his imminent death. Let's see if I actually got a good game out of the guy, or if he just... nope. He just conceded, I think, and then left. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe, leave any comments, thumbs up, all that stuff. And I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks a lot. Bye.